Hello everyone. We are in the fourth session of our video series in nanoelectronics for module 6. In the previous 3 sessions, we discussed about MOSFETs, heterostructure bipolar transistors, and also about resonant tunneling effect and resonant tunneling diodes. In today's session, we shall discuss about hot electron transistors and resonant tunneling transistors. So, the heroes of today's session are two kinds of transistors. So, let's begin with. We have already discussed the concept of hot electron effect in our previous module, right? So, we know that when electrons are accelerated in extremely high electric fields, these electrons tend to acquire energies which is much higher than their thermal equilibrium energies. So, normally in thermal equilibrium, the electron temperature, say that electron temperature as TE, they basically coincide with the temperature of a crystal. But when it comes to non-equilibrium condition, that is basically a non-equilibrium condition occurs when there is a external applied field. So, whenever there is an external applied field, electric field, this field can accelerate the electrons to very high velocities, thus increasing their kinetic energy, thereby their overall temperature TE, and this temperature can reach values which is much higher than the values of the crystal lattice. In such a situation, the electrons which has energy higher than the equilibrium energy level is called hot electrons, and the effect hot electron effect. Basically these heterojunctions, whenever we say heterojunctions, the first image that comes into our mind is perhaps of aluminum gallium arsenide and gallium arsenide. So, when the different band gap semiconductors are brought together to form heterojunctions, they allow the generation of hot electrons, because these electrons will acquire good amount of kinetic energy because of this discontinuity in the your energy gaps, because we have a change in conduction band delta EC and there is a change in valence band energies delta EV. So, whenever there is this discontinuity in energy levels, the electrons will definitely acquire some kinetic energy when they will travel from this semiconductor of a wider band gap to the one with a smaller band gap. So, the heterojunctions, in fact, they nourish the hot electrons because of the change in band gap energies. So, now what happens is, when these electrons travel across the junction, these electron beams are they start converging. They converge because of the high acceleration in the direction of the electric field. You have an applied electric field, right? So, because of this applied electric field, the electrons which are being traveling across the junction, they start converging. And finally, these electrons concentrate inside a very small region or very small cone. So, you can imagine, consider a big plate which is injecting electrons, and I have a very small hole for these electrons to go. And in the presence of an electric field, these huge set of electrons will start converging to go through this hole. That's what happens here. The electrons which cross the junction is being converged, and they will finally occupy only a very small space inside a structure. This phenomena is called electron injection by the heterojunction. Right? So, right now we know what are hot electrons, how is it created. We know that heterojunctions, in fact, they nourish these hot electrons because they allow the generation of hot electrons due to the change in their conduction band energy. And the electrons, the high kinetic energy electrons are being converged into a very small region, and we call that process as electron injection by heterojunction. Now, if you want to use these hot electrons, how can you select these electrons? How can you determine that out of 100 electrons, 10 of them are hot electrons? How can you do that? So, we have different ways of selecting the hot electrons. One is we make them cross the potential barrier. See, if the barrier is not very thin, like a barrier is a pretty thick barrier, which means out of 100 electrons, only those electrons which possess much high energy can cross through the barrier, right? See, what we are trying to do is we are trying to select these hot electrons. So for that, what I am doing is I have 100 electrons in my material. I am making them like it's some kind of a competition. I am making these electrons to cross this barrier. Only those electrons, if the barrier is somewhat thick, only the electrons which have much higher energy can cross the barrier, right? They will have to break through the barrier and come out, by which I can select, okay, out of this 100, 10 of these electrons have crossed the barrier, which means I have 10 hot electrons. That is one method. Another method to find or inject hot electron is by forming thin potential barriers in the conduction band, and we allow electron tunneling. Now in this case, whatever electron beam we get is monochromatic in nature, single color. So we can do it by two methods. One is making electrons pass through the potential barrier which is thick. Only the hot electrons can cross the barrier. Another one is we inject hot electrons based on the formation of thin potential barriers. So two ideas are there. Well, so we have this concept of hot electrons, and we know how to create them. Now slowly this started giving the idea of developing transistors based on hot electrons. In fact, it was proposed by scientist Mead in early 1960s. But see, it came into application only after many years of research, only after techniques like MBA, molecular beam epitaxy, came into the industry. So only after that the manufacturing of hot electron transistors start coming. So we have the structure of a hot electron transistor. So there are three terminals, right? The base, the emitter and the collector. Now what are the elements present in it? So we have a N plus heavily N-doped gallium arsenide acting as your emitter region. Right below it we have an intrinsic aluminum gallium arsenide barrier whose thickness is very small, in the range of about 50 angstrom. See, angstrom is 10 raised to minus 10, which is even smaller than the nanometer range, which means the barrier is very thin, just to provide a slight isolation, right? And right below it, what do we have? We have the base region, right? I'm sorry, I'm continuously using the word right. Okay, below the intrinsic aluminum gallium arsenide barrier, we have the base region, a slightly N-doped gallium arsenide region, and you have a terminal taken out of it. And below the base region, we have the collector region, and the collector region is a heavily N-doped gallium arsenide region. The collector and the base is now separated by a collector barrier, which is again intrinsic gallium arsenide region. And right from this figure itself, we can see that the collector barrier is much thicker than the emitter barrier, right? So more isolation is obtained between the collector and base compared to the emitter and base because of the variation in the thickness. Now what happens? See, when you apply say a positive voltage to the collector region, the hot electrons which are coming from the emitter they start tunneling through this thin aluminum gallium arsenide barrier and finally reach the base. So what have I done? I have applied a very small positive potential to my collector region, and because of this positive potential, the hot electrons are injected to the base because they have to just tunnel through a very thin layer of aluminum gallium arsenide, right? Let's see what happens in the energy band diagram. So we can also see the energy band energy band diagram. So here we can see that from the emitter region there is a tunneling happening towards the base region when a particular collector voltage is given. So here we can see that at the emitter section, the barrier that the electrons have to cross is very thin compared to the thick barrier at the collector region. Basically, the velocity of these injected electrons from the emitter is about 5 into 10 raised to 8 centimeter per second. Yeah. And this value, this injection velocity is much higher than other kind of transistors. And the current gain through this base, alpha, okay, and we basically prefer the alpha's value to be close to unity. And we can make this value close to unity. We can make the value of alpha close to unity if the scattering in the base region and the reflection in the collector barrier is reduced. Just as we said in the case of HBTs, the same condition, right? And also the base transit time, see when the transistor is polarized, is of the order of very few femtoseconds. So see, these parameters show that hot electron transistors have a pretty good performance. That's it. Now we have hot electron transistors. We are happy with their working, they have a good performance, we have seen that. But see, being researchers, these people never get satisfied with whatever kind of devices they have. So the effort was being done on developing hot electron devices of lower dimensions. So they started thinking, how can we reduce the dimension of HET devices, hot electron transistor devices, so that your transit time is as short as possible. You want to reduce the dimension as well as you want to reduce the transit time. So this means we have to reduce the thickness of the space charge regions, which can be done by increasing the doping level of the semiconductors. But if you have to change the doping level, which means you are adding doping particles, right? These doping particles or these impurities can later diffuse into a material, form complex compounds, and they can in fact vary all the electrical chemical composition of a device, which is not desirable. We want to reduce the dimension, we want to reduce the transit time. One method is by doping. But we can't always prefer doping. Why? Because of the impurities, they may form chemical compounds. Then what is the solution? That was our next thought. So in order to overcome this problem, what the researchers proposed was that let's substitute the semiconductor at the base. In a figure, we have this base region. Let's substitute the semiconductor at the base by some other material. What must be your condition? Let's substitute the semiconductor at the base by some material which behave as a metal, because that is non-contaminant and they does not show unnecessary electromigration effects. This was done. This suggestion was considered. So from our normal hot electron transistors, I replaced the base material by a metal, forming the new kind of transistor, the metal base transistor. The metal base transistor. So in the base region of the metal base transistors, we may use materials like cobalt silicide, and they have high conductivity. So such devices were also formed. So two common types of MBT, metal based transistors, are shown in figure. So we have the metal oxide interface type of heterostructure, and in this case, for the first case, the metal oxide kind of heterostructure, the electrons are injected by tunneling through a thin barrier into the emitter junction, right? And we have the another kind of MBT, which is the silicon cobalt silicide and silicon heterostructure. So here cobalt silicide, COSI2, is chosen for the material for the base region. See, because they have very good lattice matching with silicon. See, when you are choosing the metals, different metals, we also have to consider the lattice matching. I hope you remember what is lattice matching. So since in this case, in the second case, silicon and cobalt silicide, see, the COSI2 has excellent lattice matching with silicon, and this can give you a very high quality of interfaces. Your interface will be like a perfect without any roughness. So if there is no roughness in the interface, there will not be any scattering, which can boost the electron flow. So basically in these transistors, the hot electrons, they behave as ballistic electrons, and when they reach the base region, they do not like undergo any kind of scattering, because their mean free path is larger than the thickness of the base region, right? So that's about hot electron transistors. So we have seen what is hot electron effect. Then we saw how that can be used, how you can capture the hot electrons. Two methods. How this effect can be used to develop a transistor. We saw the structure of the transistor, each component, the tunneling happening, and as we were thinking of reducing the dimensions, what was the issue that we faced, which made us replace the base material by a metal, forming the metal base transistor. Two type of metal based transistors with examples. That's it. That's what we have seen so far. Now let's go on to the resonant tunneling transistors. See, we'll see how all these are related, right? So resonant tunneling transistor, definitely this will have some relationship with the resonant tunneling effect, maybe. So when the diodes which are based on the resonant tunneling effect is coupled, or they are brought together with the normal BJTs or FETs or into any hot electron transistors, the resulting device is the resonant tunneling transistor. Okay. The resonant tunneling diode plus a BJT or FET or hot electron transistors will give you the resonant tunneling transistor. A diode plus a transistor give you not any diode, RTDs, resonant tunneling diode plus BJT, or RTD plus FET, or RTD plus HET, hot electron transistor. Any of these three combinations, the resultant device is the resonant tunneling transistor. Now let's consider each case, right? Now let's consider a bipolar transistor to which a RTD is added in the emitter junction. See, since the emitter junction is emitter to base junction is supplied by a voltage VEB. Now this controls the tunneling current, and this tunneling current will show the RTD effect. Now what is RTD effect? This one, negative differential region. So see, we have the figure showing your dependence upon collector current with respect to base emitter voltage as well as collector emitter voltage. So this is in fact similar to the normal output characteristics, and here this is similar to our input characteristics, but is it the normal BJT characteristics? No, this is the normal NDR effect, non-differential resistance effect is shown here, right? Okay. We can also see the band diagram of the transistor, where we have added a RTD with a hot electron transistor in the active region. Now here, between the emitter and the base region, there is a resonant tunneling structure, and this structure can inject a large current from the electron resonant condition till the resonant condition is reached. And see, the voltage VBE can be increased till the resonance is perfectly reached, and at that instant you get your maximum output current IC. And if VBE, our base emitter voltage, is further increased, the current starts to reduce. So what happens? See, the same explanation that I have given for NDR, the same, just the voltage names are varying, that's it. So as you further increase VB, our current is starts reducing until a particular voltage, and further with increase in voltage, once they reach the minimum voltage, there is a further increment. So see, basically these resonant tunneling transistors, they inject electrons to a very short range of energy only, right? So again they have shown another resonant tunneling transistor with a quantum well in the base region, and what material have I used here? By seeing the band diagram itself, you must be able to guess. This is again the aluminum gallium arsenide and the gallium arsenide region. I hope you could guess it. So see, in this case, several energy levels in the quantum level, in the quantum well, can be considered, and this gives a number of peaks in the collector current in the output. So rather than a single peak in the collector current, you can obtain a number of peaks in the collector current. Which means our figure, this figure, here we have a single peak, right? Since we have multiple quantum wells in this case, you can have multiple peaks too. Here we have shown just a single peak, right? In the case of the aluminum gallium arsenide resonant tunneling transistor, it is possible for us to obtain multiple peaks in collector current because of this multiple energy levels, right. So what we have seen is how do we form a resonant tunneling transistor. From the name itself we guessed it is something related to resonant tunneling, which means you have a resonant tunneling diode RTD along with a BJT or FET or hot electron transistor. This combination can give you a resonant tunneling transistor. So here you may add a diode either to their base region or to their active region. Depends upon what material you are using. So in the case of aluminum gallium arsenide, we found that the collector current had multiple peaks rather than a single peak, which we have been observing in almost all NDR devices. So they, due to their multiple energy levels, can support multiple peaks in collector current. That's it. Now what are the applications? We'll just go through these. Applications of RTT. So basically they have huge application in digital electronics, maybe in the form of digital amplifiers, adder circuits, amplifier circuit, various devices because of their specific performances. RTTs are commonly being used, and a beautiful advantage is that they have huge packing densities and computation speeds is much better than the other conventional devices. So because of all these reasons, again researches are being done in this particular kind of nanostructure device. That's for this session. So the session was about hot electron transistors and resonant tunneling transistors. So I hope the relationship between resonant tunneling diode, hot electron transistors and resonant tunneling transistors is clear. How they depend on each other, right? That's for the session. And if it's been a long session, please go through this. Let me know if you have any doubt. I'm ready to clear that. Thank you.